Welcome back to my channel, my pips. It's always nice and great to have you guys here. And in this video and the next, yes, these days I do two-part series. In this video and the next, I shall be talking about what to do when you're called, how to behave, what to know, and what to expect when you're called by God. And without any further ado, let's dive right in. So first and foremost, and I hate the fact that I have to start like that, but the first thing you need to know when you're called, and I know this may sound not that deep, may sound obvious and whatnot, but you need to know for sure that you're called by God. You need to know for sure that you're called by God. And not the cute, I know I'm called, I know I'm chosen. All that is true, by the way. But just because you're called, it doesn't mean you're called to that. So before you start out on anything that you believe God has called you onto, seek confirmation. Ask Him to confirm it. There's nothing wrong with asking God for confirmation. He has no problem with you asking for confirmation. You can be like, God, I know this might be you, but I want to know. Actually, scratch the want. I need to know that it's really you. I don't have to change my life's goals and plans and my life's trajectory because of something I'm feeling. I need to be sure that the something is you. It's not a something, it's a someone. And I know that sounds cheesy, and it is, but it's the truth. You need to be sure that it's actually God who has called you to that. Even when Gideon was called by God, the first thing that he did was he confirmed that it was actually God who had called him. Then he confirmed that it was actually him who God was calling. He said, if it is really you, Lord, if it is really the angel of the Lord, then just wait right here. Don't depart from here. Let me go and bring my offering. And he brought unleavened bread and meat. And the angel of the Lord touched the offering with the end of his staff. And immediately a fire flared up and consumed the whole offering. And that's when Gideon knew for sure that it was God. Later on, we see that Gideon says, okay, God, I know it is you, but I want to know that it is me that you actually want. And therefore he says, tomorrow I'm going to place fleece. Fleece is basically freshly sheared wool. He said, tomorrow I'm going to place fleece on the ground, and in the morning when I wake up, if it is really you who is calling me, the fleece will be covered in dew, but the ground around it will be dry. And that's exactly what God did. As if that was enough, Gideon was like, okay, I know it is you, God, and I'm starting to think that, yes, it is really me you're calling, just because I'm the weakest family member from the weakest clan, just because there's the likelihood that I am the weakest link in Israel. There's the fact that many people may not believe me. So if I'm going to convince the Israelites that it is actually me you've called, you're going to need to convince me again that you've actually called me. And he was like, okay, this time I'm going to put the same fleece on the ground. And this time I want the fleece to be dry, if it is really you, and the ground around it to be wet. And that's exactly what happened. God confirmed it. The first time God confirmed that it was him who was talking to Gideon. And 2 times Gideon sought confirmation from God that it was actually him as Gideon being called and not anyone else. And 2 times God confirmed it. Why am I overemphasizing the need to seek confirmation from God? Because through this journey of being called, there'll be trials and there'll be tribulations. And the only thing that might hold you up is the fact that you know it's actually God who's called you. By virtue of the very reason that we prophesy in part and we only see in part. You may not know the end game at the beginning. You may not have the whole picture in the beginning. And even if you think you do, you don't. And at some point, you'll be like, it's not worth it. The pain, the suffering, the being distant from my family because they don't believe in what I'm doing. My friends don't believe in what God has called me to. It's not worth it. It's so easy to think that. And in those moments, the only thing that will keep you going is the fact that you will be sure that God is in it. It's God who is sending you. It's God's hand that is guiding you. And that will have to be enough. And as I've just said, there'll be trials and tribulations, which means that when you're called, life is going to be hard. And that is my next point. When you're called, life is going to be hard. As a matter of fact, not only will the calling itself be hard, but your life will actually get harder as a result of the calling that God has placed onto your life. Why will your life become harder? Because you'll have to make decisions and sacrifices that other people are not making, decisions and sacrifices that other people may not even relate to. For example, you might find yourself, you are waking up earlier than everyone else and sleeping later than everyone else, but you're still broke. Because yet ni hustle unapiga. And you trying to explain to people that I'm actually doing this for the Lord, very few people will actually understand it. Very few people will be like, yeah, that makes sense. But you'll have to be on this walk, not alone, but with God. And by the, just in case you didn't know, just because you're called, it doesn't exempt storms in your personal life. Your personal life won't be perfect just because you're called. God won't be like, okay, my children, my daughters and sons were actually called. Their personal lives will be nothing but joy and happiness because I want them to concentrate on the call. It will just be as imperfect. And you know, one of the worst things about life, and it's my cousin who actually told me this and taught me this lesson. He said, one of the worst things about life is that life has no pause button. I think from the moment you're 12 or 13, there's no moment you'll have a year or years where God is like, okay, ask him that pain. Feel the pain, heal from the pain. You have time. There's nothing else you're going to be doing apart from healing. There's nothing else you're going to be doing apart from basking in my presence and doing nothing. From the moment you start growing up, life keeps on moving. And he says he realized this when he lost both his parents. And despite him losing both his parents, the son still rose and sang. People still went on with their businesses almost as usual, despite the fact that him and his siblings were crushed to the core of their existence. Life goes on. And I want to take this opportunity to just agonize with anyone going through anything right now. I know it's not easy. I know you might not have called for it. I know you might not have deserved it. And how I wish there was something I could do or say that will make it all go away or make it all better. But what I do know is God will work it out. As a matter of fact, he's working on it right now. But in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the hurt, in the midst of the disappointment, you're still called. How I wish, we all wish that God will be like, okay, the business you invested everything in, your time, your money, and you lost your family as a result of that through a divorce, despite the fact that it has crashed, now you're exempted from your calling. We all wish that God will be like, okay, you've lost a loved one. Now you're exempted from your calling. Life would have been so much simpler like that. But God says, no, you can take a break, but you can never quit. I'll heal you as you go on with the journey. While you're still touching the hearts of others, I'll mend yours. And I know right about now, the things I'm saying seem so, and I know right about now, the things I'm saying sound so hard and even harder than anything you've ever had to do by yourself. And guess what? It actually is. You can't do it on your own. If you could do it on your own, you wouldn't need God. But a godly given purpose, a calling that comes from God, cannot be handled by you alone. We were never supposed to do this life thing on our own. It was all about tapping into his power and his might and allowing him to do it through us for his glory. Him through us for his glory. We're just the conduit. It's not about us. And that leads me to my next point. My third point is that your calling is not about you. Sad to say, sad to know, but it's not about you. So when God calls you, it's about him. And guess what? It is also about others. So, just in case you didn't know, one of the surest and most sincere ways of knowing that your calling is actually from God and not a motivation of your self-seeking ambitions is it actually benefits others. And it's actually more about others than it is about you. God is not going to bless you so that you can just keep everything to yourself and compete with Jeff Bezos. No. Yes, you can walk into financial abundance as a result of your calling, but God blesses you to be a blessing. He's giving you abundance so that that abundance can flow through you. He's blessing you to be a blessing. The benefits that accrue to you are just an extra. That's not the main thing. When God calls you, he's not calling you to be the center of anything. That will be God making you a God here on earth. God with a small g. God doesn't bless you. God doesn't call you. He doesn't elevate you so that you can be the center of everything. He just wants to use you. There's a difference between God using you and you being the center of everything. God is not calling you to be the center of anything. He's calling you to be a part of it. Not the center, just a part of it. And the last thing you need to know when you're called is faith is everything. Faith in God, faith in what He's called you to is everything. Like, bro, if you don't believe in what God has called you to, who will? And you see, faith doesn't necessarily mean that you won't ever doubt yourself or doubt whether God is actually in it. As a matter of fact, this video is a product of me doubting whether God had actually allowed me to go on YouTube. So maybe doubt isn't such a bad thing. Okay, maybe it is, but maybe a good thing can flow from that doubt. And the problem is there are so many Christians trying to hide their doubts in what God has called them to because they believe that admitting to the doubt equates to admitting to lacking faith in God. And they're not the same thing. Having doubt doesn't mean you don't have faith, because faith is a permanent state of knowing something for sure. Doubt is a temporary feeling. It's the same way I love my family and friends all the time. I don't like them all the time. So even the days they are annoying, even the days where I'm like, some of you deserve to be high-fived with a chair on the face, even on those days, I still love them. I still love them on those days. And J.D. Greer put it so well: faith is not the absence of doubt. It is continuing to follow Christ amidst the doubt. My peeps, remember when Peter was walking on water with Jesus? Peter did not start sinking because he merely noticed the winds and the waves. It's his reaction to the winds and the waves. It's the fact that his response was a response of fear. The fact that he allowed fear to paralyze him to the point where it shifted his focus from the one by whose power he had been able to cover those meters on water. Similarly, God has no problem when you start wondering on how His plans will happen. Some of you have been called to be CEOs and presidents and whatnots of big organizations, but right now you're living below the poverty line. Of course, you're bound to have questions. You're only human. How will it happen, God? And God has no problem with that. But He says, don't allow your questions as to the how distract you and make you lose faith from the who. And with that, I'm going to end this video. If this video has impacted you in any shape, way, or form, please like, share, subscribe. And with that, till next time, my pips, thank you for watching.